Hey there. I'm here. Welcome to Win TV. I'm your host, Denise Rollard Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer. And so glad to be with you again on this Friday at noon here at the offices of the Washington Informer on Martin Luther King Avenue in Washington, D.C. I want to thank you for watching today. We have a very full and informative show with some very exciting guests. So I'm glad that you'll be able to stay with us, I hope, for the program. We want you to click the share button on if you're watching us on Facebook so that you can have other folks that can join us as well. And if you haven't done so already, I want to remind you to pick up a copy of the Washington Informer at your local newsstand. About to lose that, Sherry, but this is the latest copy. You know, we come out every Thursday, and so the issues are now there available at your newsstand. So please feel free to pick it up. And if you want to read it online, you know, you can do that as well. Just visit WashingtonInformer.com. And as a matter of fact, if you sign up for the Washington Informer there, we will deliver a digital copy of the Washington Informer newspaper to your mailbox, email box every Thursday when the paper is distributed. And also, while you're there, we would ask you to really sign up and consider subscribing to the Washington Informer. I keep saying Washington Informer. Am I doing my own commercial? And yes, I am. But consider subscribing as well, because if you do that, again, like I said, we'll deliver copies to your mailbox. You can also get our Win Daily, which of course brings you up to date on news that's happening in our community and updates on this COVID pandemic that we're still fighting. And I can always remind you, and never enough, I hope that you're continuing to wear your mask, to wash your hands regularly, still remain socially distant. But most important now, if you're eligible in your jurisdiction to get the vaccine, I would strongly, strongly recommend that you do so. Got mine, so I feel protected. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that with Dr. V when we see her at the end of the show. We also want to make sure that you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as on YouTube. You can follow us at Washington Informer TV. Today, we will be talking to quite a few folks. We hope to have DC Deputy Mayor John Falchicchio, who's going to be with us to talk about a very important program that will help DC renters who need assistance in paying their rent and utility bills. This is extremely important now because, you know, folks will be facing evictions, and the mayor as well, not only in the district, but I think in the jurisdictions across the whole region, want to make sure that folks don't end up with no place to live. We want people to be able to get those bills paid, their utilities bills paid, and Deputy Mayor John Falchicchio is going to talk to us about a program here in the District of Columbia. We also have Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation President and CEO David Iannucci, who's going to talk with us about Dine Prince George's, the campaign in Prince George's County, where we can now plan to visit some of our favorite restaurants. And so he's going to give us an update on that, as well as some highlights of what we can hope to hear in County Executive also Brooks' next State of the Economy in Prince George's County, which will take place next Wednesday. Will Ford, our Washington Informer Prince George's County editor, of course, will be there to cover that. But if there's some highlights we can share with you right now, we look forward to doing that. And continuing our Earth Day series, Restoring the Earth, you know, April the 22nd is Earth Day. And so we are having Dr. Marccus Hendricks, a professor at the University of Maryland and an expert on stormwater runoff and its impact on our environment. Also joining us is writer and journalist Deneen Brown, producer of Red Summer, a documentary airing on PBS, and I can't wait to hear about that and the work that she's put into this documentary and so many other stories that she's been covering that really impact the Black community and the work that she's been doing in that area. It's just great that she's been able to join us. And last but not least, as I said, Dr. V, our resident doctor, who will bring us some health news tips, particularly as it relates to COVID-19. Last but not least, of course, we always want you to stay at the end of the program because that's when WR Bridge DC's Media Prince is going to give us the update on what's going on DC. And of course, we will feature a brand new artist on Sounds of the DMV. So sit back, enjoy. If you haven't had your cup of coffee, get it now, and or tea or whatever it is you like to drink, and have enjoy us for the next hour. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes as we have a news broadcast from reporter Curtis Knowles.
This is Curtis Knowles with WIN TV News. The state of Maryland will be experiencing a shortage of vaccinations of about 33% this coming week. The state's Secretary of Health, Dennis Schrader, stated the vaccine supply will be short from all vaccine makers. Governor Hogan stated he was caught off guard by the shortage, and there is not much information on what may have caused the shortage, although it is believed that it may have been caused by a manufacturing plant mishap in Baltimore. DMV officials are suspending the usage of the Johnson & Johnson coronavirus vaccine. This comes after federal officials say the institution should pause on the administration of the vaccine after some recipients developed blood clots. As of now, 6.8 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine have been administered, with majority having mild or no side effects in patients. Video footage of 2 Virginia state cops threatening a black Army officer has sparked controversy. The video plainly shows the officers threatening U.S. Army 2nd Lieutenant Karan Nazario, even as he complied with their demands. He was pepper sprayed by the officer and thrown to the ground in his arrest. The main officer involved, Joe Gutierrez, has been terminated since then. More news of police brutality stems from the murder of Derek Wright Sr. in Minnesota. Wright was murdered by the former Brooklyn Center cop Kim Potter, who has since been charged with second-degree manslaughter. Potter stated that she believed that she was holding her taser and not her firearm when she discharged into Wright. Wright's death has sparked more controversy around the nation. The state of Maryland leads the nation in police reform as lawmakers voted Saturday to override Governor Hogan's veto to police reform bills. Maryland was the first state to enact a law enforcement Bill of Rights in 1974 and is now the first state to repeal this law. The package includes provisions to increase the civil liability limit on lawsuits involving police. It also includes that officers convicted of causing serious injury or death through excessive force would face up to 10 years in prison. This is Curtis Knowles reporting live with WIN TV News.
Thank you, Curtis. So much happening in the news. But right now, I think what's most important is what our Deputy Mayor, John Falchicchio, is going to bring to us or talk to us about. Are you there, John? Yeah. We're going to a video first.
So we're at Hill East today, and we're actually cutting the ribbon at the Park Kennedy. We're also breaking ground on F1, which is the second building to go in at Hill East, and this is where we're redeveloping housing, retail, and mixed-use development in order to help us meet Mayor Bowser's goal of 36,000 new homes by 2025. Park Kennedy is over 100 units of housing with affordable housing included, and then we'll have another building. The second building on the site is known as Parcel F1, but it'll be 100 units of permanent supportive housing. So if you want to learn more about this development or other developments around DC, go to demped.dc.gov to learn about all the work that we're doing to hit our citywide goal of building 36,000 new homes by 2025.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good, good. Looks like you're standing up. So if you don't mind pushing your screen up just a little bit,
yeah,
so we can get more of your face, that'll be great. Yeah, so that's exciting. This whole goal of 36,000 new homes. I think one of the concerns that a lot of residents are having is how they're going to stay in the homes that they have already. And it's not, I don't mean to take that lightly, but it's a serious issue. And so I was just trying to figure out how we can, what the mayor has planned for that.
Absolutely. Well, Denise, thanks for having us on, and thanks for really highlighting this important program. So on Monday, Mayor Bowser announced Stay DC, which actually stands for Stronger Together by Assisting You. And it really is an opportunity if residents are behind on rent or utilities, that includes DC Water. Pepco, Washington Gas. They have an opportunity to apply at stay.dc.gov, and Mayor Bowser is going to have their back. She's going to make sure that we get this resource to their housing provider and to the utility companies so that the resident is made whole. This is actually something that we're really excited that the federal government has actually funded. So the first tranche of funding, about $200 million, came to us in December's appropriation bill. And then with the American Rescue Plan, we got an additional $152 million. That's how we got to the $352 million that's available to our residents. But Denise, one thing that is of great concern to us is that if we don't have that first tranche of $200 million obligated by the end of September, we don't get the rest of the funding.
Wow.
So we need residents to apply, tell us what they need, and that's really why we called it what we did. Mayor Bowser wanted to make folks know that they shouldn't hesitate to ask for help. If they need help, come forward because it actually makes us stronger. We want our families to stay in DC.
You know, one of the questions, because I actually know individuals, and that's why I'm happy about this program, who are facing eviction. The courts have proceeded against them. They have eviction notices in their hands. And I thought, you know, there was a moratorium on that. And so they're desperately trying to figure out what to do. They don't know about this program. And so I'm glad that you're bringing this to us so that we can share this with them. But what are the qualifications? What does it take to qualify for assistance?
So there are requirements that the federal government has laid out, and it's basically an income requirement. So a single individual who makes $58,000 a year or less qualifies for this program. And if you are a family of four, that goes up and it's about $82,000. So if your income is $82,000 or less for a family of four, you would qualify. There's also a qualification for folks who maybe have made more than that in the past, but because of the pandemic have been impacted with a loss of income or even have lost their job, they would qualify too. And so what we want folks to do is go to stay.dc.gov, start the application, because that will allow us to understand the need. And then we have folks who are going to stand by to make sure we look at those applications quickly and really understand who's eligible and get the eligible folks assistance. But for those who aren't eligible, it actually help us in a way really think about other programming that we might need. But right now, we've got a deadline. We've got to get this resource obligated by September. So we need our residents to step forward now and go to stay.dc.gov. And
is there anything, John, you can tell us that would make a person ineligible besides the income requirement?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a really good question. And the thing we want folks to do is really come forward and tell us what they need. So we actually can pay their rent for 12 months of past due rent. So imagine that. If we're standing here in April of 2021, if you've got rent that's due back to April of 2020 and following through to today, we can actually cover that rent, but you have to apply. We have to know about it. And so the application, I'll be clear, does require that you provide some information like your lease, like your utility bills or the account numbers for your utility bills. But that's in order so that we could pay those bills for you. What's really exciting about this program, too, is that it's not just about 12 months of back rent. We could actually even help you with 3 months of forward rent.
Wow.
So this is why we're so excited, and we really need residents to step up. And we'll work as hard as we can to review all the applications, determine eligibility. And, you know, we do have some other resources, but right now, this resource is use or lose. So we've got to get our residents to apply.
And this is a complete, how can I say, maybe no obligation type assistance. I mean, do you have to pay this money back or what happens?
No, so this is really no obligation. All you have to do, well, the biggest part that the resident has to do is to apply. So to work their way through the application to make sure that they provide the supporting documentation, like the lease. There's also ways, if they don't have all their documentation, to do self-certification. So what we'll do is we'll have housing providers, community-based organizations who reach out to the resident and the housing provider in order to make sure that once they start the application, that we see it through. So really, this is the best way for folks to catch up on all those past due bills. And really what we don't want folks to do is try to think before they get to the application, well, am I going to be eligible? Am I not going to be eligible? And do I have all the paperwork? Start the application now, and it will help us see what need is out there. So we know as of last night at 7 p.m., 2,992 residents had already started an application.
Wow.
And of that group, 1,992 had actually completed the application. They're on their way to getting that past due rent for the last year and 3 months forward rent paid by the federal resource.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. I'm wondering because even though legally, the mayor has this moratorium, you all have the moratorium on evictions, it seems like the legal process is still going forward. Are the courts involved at all, or any of the other offices that that are involved in that process? Do they provide that information to tenants, or is that are you all on your own to make sure folks get it?
Actually, that's a really good recommendation, Denise. And in addition to us, getting the word out through social media, through traditional media, working with our partners like the courts will be important. And what Mayor Bowser did earlier this year was convene what she called the Rental Housing Strike Force, which included representation from the courts. So what I'm going to actually do after this is make sure I talk to our director, Polly Donaldson, our director of the Department of Housing and Community Development, who runs that strike force, to make sure that the courts can send out notices too, because that's a really great suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just, I'm not going to ask you to pay for that. That was just joking.
No.
But no, I mean, I'm also, because I like the story about, the new housing that's coming to the district, the mayor's goal. There's been this ongoing goal for several years to bring new residents to the District of Columbia, to provide housing for new residents. We're still losing quite a few, but how is that going? I mean, is it netting out? Is it balancing out? Are we bringing in as many new residents as we may be losing?
So what I'd say about Mayor Bowser's initiative, we call it 36,000 by 2025. So she wants us, like we said in the video, to create 36,000 new homes by 2025. She announced it in January of 2019. And the reason she did is because this isn't just about bringing in new residents, it's actually about housing affordability. So when there's more supply of housing, rents stabilize and could actually go down. So let me actually give you an example. Howard University did a study in 2020 and looked at the DC housing market between 2000 and 2018. We produced, in that period of about 18 years, we produced 40,000 new units of housing. In that time, if that housing wasn't created, rents would have been 5.8% higher. So we know that rent went up during that time, but if that housing production didn't happen, we know that rent would have been 5.8% higher. They also looked at the goal that Mayor Bowser laid out from 2019 to 2025. And in that time period, if we create 36,000 new units of housing, rent will be at least 5.5% lower than it would have been if we don't produce that housing. And so for us, it's not about drawing new residents. It's actually about making housing more affordable for the residents who live here today.
So, but that's a lot. I mean, as I drive across the city, and I'm in Ward 8, but I come through Southeast, Southwest, South Capitol Street. I mean, there are buildings still going up everywhere. Lots of units going up all over the place. And I'm sure a lot of folks, I have conversations with people who are asking, who's moving into these places? Where are they coming from? And are they really affordable? So we don't see what you all see. And it's good that there's a program that is actually trying to stabilize rents, because it is very expensive to live in the District of Columbia. I think we all know that. Is this actually something that you think will stabilize the rental availability for all incomes?
Yeah, and that's really the driver behind the initiative. The other part of that is there's 36,000 by 2025, but there's a sub goal to create 12,000 units of income restricted affordable housing. So we talked about some of the income levels to qualify for Stay DC. We also have income levels that you have to have in order to move into some of that 12,000, that new stock of 12,000 affordable units. So really that is going to be a great way to keep our families here, to make sure that they can thrive here for years and years to come.
Well, I appreciate the work that you all are doing for our 51st state as we move to Douglas Commonwealth. And before I let you go, can you just give us, our viewers, a little bit more of how to reach out for the Stay DC program? How do they get in touch?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. It is Emancipation Day. I've got to give a shout out to my colleague, Beverly Perry.
Yes.
Today at actually 4 p.m. on Channel 9, WUSA 9, there's actually a documentary about our work from Emancipation Day up to where we are. So it's called Becoming Douglas Commonwealth, and I hope folks will tune in to check that out today. But what we want folks to do, and you talked a little bit about evictions too, that moratorium actually lifts the federal moratorium at the end of June. And the local one goes a little bit further, but what we also see is court challenges to the eviction moratoriums themselves. So we want folks to apply right now. Go to stay.dc.gov. If you have questions and you want to ask us something before you actually start the application, all you have to do is call 1-833-4-STAY-DC. So that's 1-833-4-STAY-DC. And when you're ready to apply, stay.dc.gov.
Wonderful. Okay. We're going to try to get that up on the screen. And John, thank you so much. And yes, happy Emancipation Day. I'm so glad that you brought that up. We will be talking about that a little bit later on. And, you know, that's quite a story. So thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Have a great day. Yeah, so we're going to continue to share that information with you all. It's really important. If you know someone that's facing eviction, that's having a hard time paying their rent, that's behind on their utilities, they don't have to be. And it sounds like from Deputy Mayor Falchicchio that it's really, really important for people to apply. The money is there. Don't let DC send this money back. Go ahead and apply. Or have to send it back. I won't say send it back, but there's more money coming so long as they can spend down all the money that they've received already. And this money is available to anybody out there who was eligible to help to pay rent, 12 months of rent, going backwards. That's amazing. So please share the word, share the word, share the word. And I want to hear some success stories. I want to hear some of you all who are so grateful for this opportunity to catch up on. We all get behind. We all get behind. So it's no need to feel embarrassed about that. But, you know, who want to share how this really helped you and your family. We certainly want to hear more about that from you. We're going to move now to talking about economic development. It's so a pleasure for me to bring on Mr. David Iannucci, who is the president and CEO of the Prince George's Economic Development Corporation. And, you know, as this COVID-19 hopefully begins to leave us, we're happy that we can now find some places to go and eat. Mr. Iannucci, how are you? And welcome to WIN TV.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you. And thank you, WIN TV, for having Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation on, and for giving me the chance to talk about dying Prince George's County. We're doing quite well here. Obviously, it's been a tough haul for the last 12 months for the whole nation, and certainly for Prince George's County. And some restaurants are among the hardest hit segments in our entire economy. Many of them have told me that December, January, and February were really the 3 worst months in their history. So under the County Executive Angela Alsobrooks and the Economic Development Corporation, we've created this exciting new program, Dine Prince George's County. And we're trying to encourage our citizens to eat in local restaurants and to choose their very favorite restaurants by voting. We're in week 5 so far, 2 weeks to go. I think we have more than 90 restaurants that entered the contest. And we have 3 winners a week. So it's a very exciting. People should go to pgcedc.com and you'll see the link there to this Dine Prince George's County program. But that's what we're trying to do, trying to get our citizens to support local restaurants in Prince George's County by their votes.
Well, it makes sense, you know, because A lot of people have been home. They've cooked meals that they never knew how to cook. They're baking, they're doing all kinds of things, and now they're getting tired. You know, I hear stories about folks saying, okay, I've had enough of my kitchen. We've had this love affair is over, and they want to come on out and find places to dine. And so this is a great program. And it's hard to know who's open, who's not, who's still, you know, some of our favorite places, unfortunately, did not make it. And so this is a great opportunity, it sounds like, to support local restaurants.
You're absolutely right. And grocery sales, of course, were up dramatically during the last year because we were all going to grocery stores and not eating in local restaurants. I know my family's made a point, at least twice a week, we try to go to a local restaurant. One, just as you said, a break from our own cooking, but two, to support these folks who are, a lot of them put their life savings into these establishments. And it's been very, very challenging. We've had several shutdowns entirely during the period where they had to rely entirely on takeout or carry out and so forth. Outdoor dining is a really big part of this. So with the spring weather that we're all enjoying and the restaurants being able to open up outdoors, it's going to be very, very good for business. And so, the contest has got 2 more weeks to go. We're actually opening up to new restaurants that can be entered into the process. And you get to go and you get to vote regularly. And you have to be open for business. Food has to be your primary, what you're trying to do, selling food. It's Dine Prince George's County. We want people to eat in local restaurants. You have to be in good standing with the state of Maryland for tax purposes and so forth. But pgcedc.com/Dine Prince George's. You can go and see your favorite restaurant and you can vote as many times as you want. We've had 15 winners so far. And so we're very, very excited. We want Prince George's County citizens to support Prince George's County restaurants.
So once the list, can we find that list on the website as well of the top restaurants?
Yes, you can. Go to that website, and the 90 restaurants that are entered there are listed. But you can also, in the next 2 weeks, you can even nominate restaurants that might not have been nominated so far, and you can then vote for those. And it's all citizen participation.
And do they have to be sit-in?
No, they can be food trucks.
Carry out. Food trucks as well. Okay.
Food trucks, carry out, but it has to be food. We're trying to, again, the title is Dine.
Right.
We want people to so that's what it's all about, is trying to get them in the outdoor dining, takeout, carry out, food trucks, and so forth.
So, I mean, with this whole pandemic and the impact that it's had on restaurants in the county and other businesses, what other initiatives are you all coming up with actually to help support businesses in Prince George's?
That's really, thank you for asking that question. The Economic Development Corporation, along with our sister agencies, FFC First and Experience Prince George's County, we put out more than $40 million in grants in the last 11 or 12 months to help businesses of all kinds, but there's been special restaurant programs. There was a special program for childcare facilities and one for hotels, giving them literally grants, not that had to be paid, not loans that had to be paid back, but grants. And in fact, I appreciate you asking the question. We're going to be announcing in the next week or two an additional $3 million that's going to be available for restaurants for $12,000 grants. This is a second round of restaurant assistance. And we're trying to keep these restaurants, make sure they still have employees. It's very important to the County Executive Alsbrooks that these jobs be preserved, but we also want to keep these restaurants there. There have been predictions, Denise, over the summer that 30% of the restaurants nationwide might close. Now, the federal government has provided something like $29 billion in that last initiative that passed in a month or so ago. And I think that might single-handedly help change that prediction of 30% closures and keep many of these restaurants open. So the federal government's had a role. The state of Maryland has had a role. Prince George's County has stepped up as well, trying to support our local restaurants. That was a great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, no problem. And the other question I have, because in your job, you're also responsible for attracting new businesses to the county. How have you been able to do that, or have you had to really suspend that effort during COVID to really focus on stabilizing the existing businesses?
The Economic Development Corporation, you're absolutely right. Our primary responsibility is to support our existing businesses and to attract new businesses to the county. And we've had great success. Prince George's County has led the state of Maryland for 6 consecutive years in job growth. We're the fastest growing county over those 6 years in adding jobs in the entire state of Maryland. But we were hit hard by COVID, and our businesses were hit hard. Unemployment rate went up, jobs were lost. And so we did do a pivot as an organization to the grants that I talked about, the $40 million grants. But at the same time, we're continuing to focus on doing what we're supposed to do, which is support our existing businesses. And we're having good success. If you look at New Carrollton, you'll see an exciting new redevelopment project around that metro station built by Urban Atlantic. WMATA is going to be putting their headquarters there. There's a new Kaiser facility, a multifamily facility. The county is going to be very excited to open its new state-of-the-art University of Maryland Capital Region Health Hospital near Largo in middle of June. So that's an exciting project. Down in Suitland, there's about a $400 million project going under construction now, adding townhouses, soon multifamily, and new retail right across from that federal center. The University of Maryland is one of the strongest areas in the county for job growth. A company called IonQ, a world leader in quantum computing, just secured more than almost $1 billion through an IPO. And it's going to make Prince George's County maybe the quantum computing center of the world if that takes off. So those are things that we're still focusing on, exactly as you said, though, keeping firmly a focus on COVID relief for our local business community.
I kind of see this like a butterfly or whatever the thing that comes out of you have this cocoon. We've been in this cocoon. Chevy says cicada. I don't want to talk about cicadas, but with the COVID has had us sort of in this like shut down, sheltered area. But once it opens up, we're going to see a lot of great things happening in the county, and I know that's something that we all want to be proud of. And as well, I think what you're doing with the restaurants. One last question I want to ask, though. John Falchicchio literally is almost, I don't want to say begging, but it was close to that, telling people, please sign up for this program. Are you all having the similar challenges, or folks actually signing up for the different initiatives, for example, like Dine Prince George's?
Oh, yes. More than several thousand, I think more than 5,000 county residents have been voting for it. But we have other programs very similar to the program that John talked about. The county has rental relief programs as well. And your service here on WIN TV is so important, getting these messages out. I tell people to go to pgcedc.com. Not only will it have information about this restaurant initiative, but it'll talk about all the COVID business relief that County Executive Alsa Brooks has sponsored. You'll for restaurants, for childcare, for hotels. You'll find our regular services to support our business community, site selection and marketing and so forth. We have, we're just like you. We try to work to get the message out. And if you'll allow me, of course, County Executive Alsa Brooks will be doing her State of the Economy speech next week. And it's going to be an exciting time, 10 a.m. next Wednesday. Again, go to pgcedc.com for some of the details on that. And she'll be talking about some of the things we've talked about here, but she's going to be talking. COVID was a serious, terrible health crisis for the nation, of course, but it was also an economic crisis. And she'll talk about some of the programs that we've tried to do, some of the ones we've had a chance to talk about here. But she's going to talk about hope and excitement and optimism that we're going to get through this. The Prince George's County is going to rebound. We've gone through some tough period. Let's all hope we've gone through the toughest period so far economically. But the county executive is going to talk about kind of the optimism that we have, that the jobs are going to come back. Our unemployment rate is going to go down. Our restaurants are going to rebound. I think we're going to see a little dip in the overall economy, but I'm convinced that you'll see in the next 2 years maybe unprecedented growth as we recover these jobs that we've lost, as new entrepreneurs with new ideas, maybe people who went through a tough time and lost a job, but now they've got that idea that they always had. And maybe this is the time they're going to want to start that business. Maybe it's a technology startup around Bowie State University or the University of Maryland College Park. Maybe it's an idea they had for a restaurant that they really always wanted to open. So I think we're going to see a lot of that rebounding happening?
Well, I'm with you, and I always pull out one of my heroes' famous phrases, Reverend Jackson. I'm keeping hope alive, and I believe that with that it is going to happen. It's going to, we just got to fight through it. And we've really enjoyed having some of these creatives on the show. These ideas that were born out of COVID and now are really sustainable businesses. So I want to thank you, David, so much for being with us. We certainly want to talk to you some more in the future about the development that's going on, and we may find a way, hopefully, to share in the streaming of the county executives' State of the Economy program on Wednesday. So we'll follow up with your office on that, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, and you too. You keep it. This is a great message. You a great service that the Washington Informer is providing to this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Have a great day. Have a good weekend and stay safe. So, I mean, what programs, money's flowing. We got to get busy. And sometimes we just don't want to go through the effort of filling out these applications. Do it. And I know that we can contact folks who will help us in the process. I'm a small business owner, you all know as well. And so I know what it's all about. And if there are opportunities that are available, to quite honestly, that's what's kept the Washington Informer afloat, because of these programs during COVID. And so again, thank you. I want to thank John Falchicchio as well as David Arnochi from the district and Prince George's County for being with us. We've been talking, this is next, I think Thursday, April 22nd is Earth Day. The Washington Informer will be producing its own annual Restore the Earth Day special edition. We want to be among the folks within the Black community who talk about what Black folks have been doing historically, as one of our guests said last week, to save the environment. We've learned how to do a lot with a little, but we're also leading organizations and efforts across the country in this environmental issue, especially as it relates to environmental justice. So, but it's really a pleasure now to bring on Dr. Marccus Hendricks, after Black Facts. Chevrie's reminded me, I'm moving so far ahead. I'm excited about having Dr. Hendricks on, but we're going to stop for a minute, talk about Black Facts, but then we will get with Dr. Hendricks because we want to know what's happening in our environment with regards to stormwater and what we can do to restore the earth. We'll be back in just a second.
Here's another edition of WIN TV's Black Facts. April 16th is the passing anniversary of the late author and National Book Award winner for novel Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison, who died in 1994. On April 17th, 1990, playwright August Wilson won his second Pulitzer Prize for drama with his play The Piano Lesson. April 18th, 1980 was declared Zimbabwe's Independence Day. April 19, 1947, Jackie Robinson became the first African-American Major League Baseball player. On April 20th, 1951, rhythm and blues singer and songwriter Luther Vandross was born. On April 21st, 1986, Michael Jordan set an NBA playoff scoring record, scoring 63 points against the Boston Celtics. And on April 22nd, Bob Marley's One Love concert was held in 1978.
Reporting from the Washington Informer, this is Lindiwe Vilakazi.
Thank you, Linda Way. We always like to have our Black Facts. Dr. Hendricks, we do at the Washington Informer, we do Black History 365 days a year. So, so glad to always have that segment of the program. And we'll be talking about you one day in Black Facts because of what you're doing in the area of environmental, helping to save the environment. So welcome to WIN TV.
Much, Denise. Thank you for having me. Thank you for finding me and inviting me to be in conversation with you this afternoon.
So you're professor at the University of Maryland?
I am.
What are you teaching there?
Yeah, I'm currently an assistant professor of urban studies and planning. I also direct the Stormwater Infrastructure Resilience and Justice Lab in the School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. I also happen to be a faculty affiliate with the Maryland Institute for Applied Environmental Health in the School of Public Health at the university, amongst a number of other affiliations across the campus.
You know, Dr. Hendricks, how did you get into this whole area of you know, the environment or sustainability?
Sure. I think, for many of us who grew up in environments that were plagued by environmental issues, we have sort of a conviction or a calling in this space. And that was essentially sort of my story in terms of how I got involved and my trajectory and current research program. I grew up in a low income Black and Latinx community in inner city Dallas. And we were plagued by a number of environmental issues, including stormwater issues, by which, we experienced circumstances where, our local stormwater infrastructure was distressed, always filled with litter, trash, and debris. And there were a number of circumstances when, storm events overwhelmed those systems and caused flooding in our community, and particularly in my home that I grew up in. And so that lived experience, sort of begged a question of what was it about my community that created these circumstances that were very different and starkly different than other communities when I would travel across town, and really inspired me to sort of get after the root causes of some of these issues at the intersection of, what I like to call the human-built environment, because the built environment doesn't, manifest out of the abyss. I mean, there are human decisions that are made that construct the built environment, and what that looks like in light of, storm events and wet weather events that create these flood scenarios.
And so what did you discover?
What I discovered, thus far is that, there are, much like what we've seen over the past year in terms of access to, public health facilities, or even more recently in terms of the distribution of, the COVID vaccine, Black and brown communities and indigenous communities across the country lack access to a number of, social and environmental services that are supposed to benefit the community. And so when we talk about environmental justice, we think about, the social, the natural, and the built environment, and the ways in which, environmental laws, regulations, and policies haven't been applied fairly across all segments of the population. And so not only do we, have challenges in terms of access to vaccines, but we also lack access to grocery stores and healthy food outlets. We also lack access to green space, parks and recreation facilities, and including, stormwater infrastructure. And so what I've discovered thus far is that we have environmental issues on repeat in our communities that are presenting risk in terms of these natural hazards that will only become much more frequent and intense in a climate context and scenario.
So when you talk about stormwater issues, first of all, define stormwater. Does that mean like when it rains and then the rain washes debris into our sewer systems, which then end up into our waterways? Am I characterizing that properly?
Absolutely. Stormwater is, can be rainwater or snow melt that comes from precipitation events. And during these storm events, some water is absorbed by the ground or natural surfaces. That excess water puddles or flows across what we call impermeable surfaces, or hard surfaces that doesn't allow the water to infiltrate. That excess water is called surface or stormwater runoff. When it comes to forests, wetlands, grassy areas, and other naturally landscaped surfaces that allow the water to permeate or infiltrate, that's one scenario. And in these natural situations, stormwater reaches our local water bodies gradually. But from a regulatory perspective, stormwater runoff must pass through some, built or engineered conveyance system, whether it's a gutter, a pipe, or concrete channel, And if it just simply runs over a natural surface or soaks into the soil through a natural process, it may be water generated by a storm, but technically, if it's not regulated and a part of that conveyance system that's built within our communities, is not considered stormwater runoff.
Okay, I got lost somewhere in there. Because from a practical standpoint, I know that in the District of Columbia, for example, there are particularly churches that had these large parking lots, and now they're being assisted in some ways, as opposed to being fined, to create like, I guess, water gardens or places that can absorb some of that water. But when the water when they're not permeable surfaces, as you mentioned, that water has to go somewhere. So is it the problem of, I just simply said, trash or debris going into the sewer systems? That's one issue, but it sounds like I'm hearing you say something in addition to that something happens with that water that impacts the environment. What am I missing in that?
Sure. I mean, I think, when we, over the last 150 years or so, as communities and cities have developed over time, and we've utilized concrete, we've essentially paved over natural surfaces or green spaces. And within this, phenomenon, essentially, we create issues of additional stormwater runoff that doesn't, percolate into the ground. And I think what you just mentioned, or, the situation that you described, is just that. And it's not only an issue of water quantity in terms of the slow or fast buildup of excessive, rainfall or, water, but it's also water quality issues in terms of contaminants that might be picked up as the water moves across these surfaces, in terms of what you mentioned, from litter, trash, or debris, or other point source pollutants in terms of industries or facilities that might be located in our communities. And again, going back to this environmental justice, issue, we know that Black and brown communities live in the closest proximity to what we call locally unwanted land uses, or, industrial sites that, again, can pose a risk in terms of contaminating this water as it moves across these built surfaces, again, creating, water quantity and water quality issues. And I think if you were sort of paying attention to, some of the recent flood events in the Washington, D.C., metropolitan area recently, not only did we hear about flooding, but we also heard about sanitary sewer overflows and basement backups, right?
Yes.
Where this rainfall is overwhelming the stormwater system and overwhelming the sewer system and causing backups into people's homes. And so these wet weather events, cause, sewage laden waters to back up into people's homes that pose a direct risk to environmental health and public health.
So, Dr. Hendricks, this information is definitely helpful. I mean, it helps to explain what's happening. I mean, we see it rain, or we see it snow, and we try to get rid of it. And we want them to put the salt down so that we don't have ice, not realizing we tell dogs not to walk your dogs without putting little boots on them because it'll affect their feet. But we don't think about what happens to that once it gets into our sewer system. But what are there recommendations that come out of the work that you do? Do you talk with community groups? What are you telling folks about how to actually, not governments, but individuals, to what things we can do to eliminate this problem?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, there are things that we can do as individuals or at the household level, right? I think maintaining, our front and backyards and keeping them mowed, planting trees, planting other types of plants that create additional green space throughout the community, and making sure that we don't leave things out that could potentially contaminate water during storm events is helpful. Obviously not pouring any, household liquids or, cleaning materials down the drain is also helpful in terms of keeping water quality at a healthy level. But honestly, this is a challenge that's being faced, in communities across really the world. And specifically here in the U.S., where, again, we're experiencing more frequent and intense storm events. And again, I think in one of the previous segments, you talked about all of the development that's happening. And I think what we're seeing is that the development of stormwater infrastructure to manage this excessive water or stormwater runoff isn't keeping pace with the level of development that's happening above ground. And so, and we're just now realizing or acknowledging the benefits of preserving green spaces and investing in green infrastructure. We've been really, doing a lot of unsustainable development over the years. And so I think that there are, small scale changes at the household levels that we can do. Again, I think you mentioned opportunities for community gardens and sort of transforming vacant spaces throughout the community for uses like this. And again, maintaining your local your property in terms of your front and backyard. But it's really a neighborhood and municipal level issue. And we need to really be engaged with our locally elected leadership and city planners and engineers, and really thinking about how do we collaborate to develop master plans or community development plans that include some of these, green infrastructure and stormwater systems to help communities to manage this anticipated stormwater runoff to mitigate these issues.
Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Hendricks, for being with us and really for taking on this subject yourself, because we need people like you to talk about what's going on in communities like ours at the table. So, it sounds like there's a lot we need to learn. There's a lot we need to do to advocate for healthier communities, which means that we have a healthier earth. And the stormwater issue is something that I think it's, like you said, we need to celebrate those gardens and those trees. So thank you so much for being with us today. Is there something you wanted to say before we closed out?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly, I think a week ago today, President Biden announced his $2.2 trillion infrastructure bill. I think the time is right now for communities to start reaching out to their leadership to make sure that they're planned and accounted for and get their fair share of resources to really transform their communities in the ways that we talked about this afternoon.
Wonderful. I may follow up with you on that because there's probably maybe some community organizations that'll follow up with us and say, what was he talking about? Sure. So if there are ways that we can do that. So if that happens, I'll definitely reach out. We'll have you back, of course. I always like to invite our guests to come back and share more information with us. But I want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Denise.
All righty. Have a good one.
Okay, you too.
Yeah, it's Earth Day. Earth Day is coming up, April the 22nd, and there's so much we have to do. I just want to, when I talk about stormwater and all that, and I ride through our neighborhoods, and I just really want us to tell people, put your trash in a trash can, please. Last week, we learned that every bit of trash that you throw on the ground is going to end up in the Anacostia River. We don't want that because we continue to have to pay taxpayer dollars to get that river cleaned up. Just put it in a trash can. But there's more that needs to be done than that. And I think Dr. Hendricks has made it very clear of the work that needs to be done in our communities. We're going to have a brief video before I bring on our next guest, Deneen Brown, writer who is the producer of Red Summer. We'll be back in a second. Just keep watching.
They got word that trouble was coming.
The whites are killing the color.
Barbaric violence was committed against black people across this country.
Kerosene was dropped from an airplane.
Why did they teach us this? Because they didn't want you to know.
When it was an opportunity to wipe out a community, they took it.
Wow. Deneen, I think I saw a preview of that because I saw some people in there that I knew. But this is a great film that you're working on. Let me properly introduce you though first. Deneen Brown, who's a writer at the Washington Post, as well and former editor at the Washington Post, as well as associate professor at the Philip Merrill School of Journalism at the University of Maryland. We've got the University of Maryland really showing up today, so that's fantastic. Welcome to Win TV.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's quite an honor to be on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. This is a program, a film that's going to be aired on PBS, Red Summer.
So
yes.
Red Summer is Tulsa and Red Summer. This trailer is going to be aired on National Geographic Television. So that's it's National Geographic Television for Red Summer, and the director is Don Porter. So I am featured in this film, but there's also another film called Fire and Forgotten, which I'm also featured in, that will air on PBS. So there are two. It's a bit confusing, but
Thank you for setting the record straight. I mean, we can't get enough of these stories, and I'm glad that there's another one as well, and that you're featured in both. Tell me how you got involved.
Well, for this documentary, Red Summer, I actually wrote a magazine piece for National Geographic in the summer of, I guess it was 2020. We were in a pandemic. And it was as protests had erupted across the country and the world after the death of George Floyd. I was basically writing about that. And then Trump was going to Tulsa, which is a story that I've been working on. And I asked my editor whether I might write a story explaining how white mobs destroyed Black communities and lynched a number of people during this period called Red Summer, which actually led to the 1921 Tulsa race massacre. And as a result, that magazine piece was published in National Geographic, and I think they started thinking about a documentary that they could produce on the anniversary of the 1921 Tulsa race massacre, and they decided to tell the story of the massacres that occurred during Red Summer that led to Tulsa. And this is how I got involved in that documentary.
I know that the Tulsa massacre anniversary is coming up. I'm not sure of the date, but I know it's this summer. I know that there's a newspaper publisher out there in Tulsa who's actually working on that project right now. But we had these race riots in more places than Tulsa, correct?
Yes. Many people don't know that during Red Summer, there were massacres that occurred. For example, in Omaha, Nebraska, there was a massacre that occurred in East St. Louis in 1917. There was a massacre that occurred in Chicago in 1919. And then there was also a race riot that occurred in DC in 1919. So there were a number, at least 26 cities and communities were impacted by these racial terror massacres during that period of Red Summer, leading up to the 1921 Tulsa race massacre. So I'll tell you more about that, but
yeah, I'm just wondering if you, in doing this research, I mean, did you find what precipitated a lot of these? Not that anything really had to, other than folks just not wanting folks to live their lives. But what precipitated many of these massacres?
Many of the massacres were sparked by accusations of a Black man assaulting. These were false accusations in many cases, assaulting a white woman, which was the case in Omaha and also the case in Tulsa. Some of the massacres were sparked by economic envy, that Black people living in these communities had gained wealth and autonomy. So it was a way of oppressing people who were just years out of enslavement. So those were two of the main reasons that sparked these massacres. And they were fueled by hatred and racism.
In your, just checking my notes here, and it seems as though you took a trip to the Arctic.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Okay.
And I love travel, but so I'm not saying why did you go, but how does that connect to the research you've been doing, or to the environmental issues also that we've been talking about earlier? But how connect the dots for me?
So I was a foreign correspondent for the Washington Post. I was the Canada bureau chief for the Washington Post, responsible for covering all the news in Canada. As part of my tenure as a foreign correspondent, I covered the Arctic and I wrote a number of stories about climate change. So I wrote firsthand accounts about how climate change was impacting the Arctic sea ice and thinning the ice cap that covers the top of the world. Inuit hunters were falling through the ice. Polar bears were drowning as the sea ice shrank. Also, you had permafrost melting. So I wrote as a foreign correspondent for the Washington Post and Canada bureau chief, I wrote a number of stories about climate change and its impact on Indigenous people in Canada. And they kept warning, this was almost more than 20 years ago, the Inuit kept warning us to do something to stop the warming to stop climate change, and industrialized societies did not heed that warning, and so now we're seeing the impact of climate change. And as you know, it's a very, very dangerous situation, and many of our communities, Black and Brown communities, are impacted first by climate change. As your previous guest mentioned, this whole issue of environmental justice hits us hard. So again, I wrote these stories as a foreign correspondent for the Washington Post. It was incredible to travel in the Arctic. My first assignment, I often tell my students that my first assignment as a foreign correspondent was to travel from DC to Toronto to Edmonton to Yellowknife, where I saw 24 hours of daylight. And then I landed in Resolute, which is a tiny village, which looks like a dot on the top of the map. And this is like a camp where Arctic explorers take off from. So there I was in Resolute, where for about 2 or 3 days, I waited for an icebreaker to come pick me up so that I could take a trip through the Northwest Passage to write about how the Northwest Passage was melting. And it was just an incredible experience being in the Arctic. And I often say to people, go. If you can travel to California, get on a 5-hour flight or 8-hour flight, however long it takes you to get to California, you could get to the Arctic in 8 hours.
Oh.
And it's such an incredible experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it is. And it again, as I said before, it's a wonderful thought that individuals like yourself, or that look like me and others, are having that experience and are telling those stories. Because again, as I said, someone in our show last week said Black folks have been involved in environmental justice for forever. And so, but now to be able to actually visit places and tell those stories about what's happening to the environment, and also, with these in our communities, historically, what's been happening. Well, how does that shape your thoughts about, the things that you write and where we are right now as a society. I mean, I'm sure you spend a lot of time in talking to your students about what the mission should be right now.
I tell my students that our mission as journalists is to pursue the truth, and tell the stories of people who often may not have their stories told in the newspaper. That has been my mission as a journalist for more than 35 years, is to tell the stories of our people, to get their voices in the paper. In fact, when I was working for the Metro section of the Washington Post, I love to do street reporting, where I'd go out and capture what I call the wisdom of Black people in DC and get their stories in the newspaper and the way they told stories. It was very much like an anthropological study. It's very much like Zora Neale Hurston going into the South and capturing the stories and the tales. I wanted to do that as a journalist at the Washington Post and get those voices in the paper, on the Metro page and on the front page. And that's what I continue to do. I write stories now about Black history for a blog at the Washington Post called Retropolis. And it's a really successful blog. And I was on a team of reporters where our assignment was, when something happens in the news, you immediately dive into history, like literally dive into history, and research history on deadline. So for all the historians out there who they might say, "Oh, I saw that story, but you didn't, mention this and this and this." I'm like, I'm literally writing these stories, sometimes in 20 minutes, sometimes in 2 hours. My latest story that appeared yesterday in the Washington Post was where I told the story about 40 acres and a mule.
Yes.
How did that happen? And I was working until 2 a.m. at this writing desk, researching the story of the 20 Black ministers who met with General Sherman in Savannah. This was right before the end of the Civil War. And he said to them, what do you want? How can your people survive, after enslavement ends? And there's a really eloquent man named Garrison, the Reverend Garrison Frazier, who I wish I could just read you the quote.
Denise, only because we're running out of time, I'm going to plug that. I'm going to tell folks, go to the Washington Post, go online, read that story if they can. Sherry put the link. Great. The link is in the chat or at the bottom of the screen. You have left us sort of sitting on the edge of our seats so we can find out that quote and to read that story. I just think it's a pleasure that you're there and that you're telling those stories, that you're teaching your students to tell those stories, and that you value our stories. I think that's what's really critical. And so keep doing what you're doing. Something else I was going to ask you, but I've lost my thought. So anyway, thank you. I want to thank you for being with us. I really wish you could talk longer, but we're just kind of running out of time here. So we will get you back. I want to also get your colleague on, Daryl Fears, who did a big piece this week too on the whole environmental justice issue and what happened in North Carolina a few years back. That was a great story. You all are doing it over there. So thanks much. And anything you want to close out with?
Thank you for the work that you do in the community. And thank you for telling the stories and informing readers and viewers. You do such great work. And I have much gratitude for you and your legacy and your legend. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Deneen. Like I said, no matter where we are, if we have the same mission, we can accomplish a lot. And so we'll just keep doing what we do. All righty. Have a great day. Thank you. Yeah, one of the we're going to talk to Dr. V, but I mean, and we've run way over. So thank you if you're still watching. I just want to say, a lot of times people say that, you can't get news from certain sources, but we know we have journalists in a lot of newsrooms across this country, journalists of color who are knocking the doors down and doing what they can to tell our stories. And we celebrate them no matter where they are. And we're glad that they acknowledge those of us who are in the Black press for the jobs that we've been doing now since the first Black newspaper was started in 1827. So we work together hand in hand, and you'll see more journalists from across the board here at WIN TV. We're going to close out this segment of the program with Dr. V. Dr. V, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you?
I'm good. We're going to have to get you on for a much longer segment coming up, because I have so many questions now with what's happening with these vaccines. I'm like, what?
I know. Well, let me give you the quick and dirty. So the Johnson & Johnson, because everybody's asking me about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and that being paused. So I tell people the quick and dirty is we saw it in 6 out of 6.8 million vaccines. They paused it because people were saying, well, birth control pills cause clots. It's not the same sort of clot. So when you get a clot from a birth control pill, you can give people heparin. This sort of clot, if you give people heparin, it makes it worse. So they needed to actually pause it so they could actually train physicians to not treat this clot the same as we would normally treat a clot. So I do think it will be used again. They just have to train us so that we don't use our standard of care and make something worse.
It's interesting. And now I heard just yesterday, I mean, I've had the Pfizer vaccine, right? And already they're talking about the booster. And I don't know, is it, do you know anything about that? What they're
So
finding?
both Pfizer and Moderna are working on a booster. And that's primarily because of the mutations and the variants. We really have to come together as a world community to help countries like Brazil, and, in our own states, California, that have had Philippines, India, that have had really, really bad outbreaks and haven't been able to get control. So the more replication you have of this virus, the more opportunities it has to improve and also get deadlier. So that's basically what's happening until you actually, until you really get it under control. You're not going to hear of a South Korean variant or New Zealand variant, because those countries did a very good job mitigating their virus load at the very, very beginning. So these variants are coming out of hotspots. And so we're going to constantly have to do booster shots unless we get control of these hotspot areas.
I'm one of those obnoxious people who used to say, oh, I don't get a flu shot. I never wanted one. And now they got me locked into this, the COVID-19 shot. I'd be afraid not to take a booster, especially when I'm hearing numbers. I think I heard yesterday that, not only are they having upticks in places like Michigan, but right even here in Maryland, I hear that the numbers have increased. And do you have any idea of what they're finding and why that's happening? Is it because of the reopening? Is it because of the variants coming in? What's that all about?
Yeah, so Michigan, we know that there's been a 60% uptick. Their ICUs and hospitals are very crowded. We're also seeing younger patients or older patients who did not get vaccinated. So the age range is actually going down. So the ICU patients are getting younger and younger. You really have to vaccinate everyone as quickly as possible. It's really just a race against time, because as people decide to go back to their regular life, other folks who haven't gotten vaccinated want to follow suit, right? Without realizing that, if you're vaccinated, you really kind of need to not do that until you actually get vaccinated. I have not seen anybody in the emergency department who has been vaccinated who's come in sick. Okay, with COVID. So everybody that we're seeing right now are folks that are unvaccinated.
Right.
So yeah, the openings are I think a bit too soon. And then you have the variants like the UK variant, which is now dominant variant in the United States. And you've got all these other variants coming in. And I tell people you have to kind of really get everybody vaccinated as quickly as possible and then open up.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, about those that you haven't seen in the emergency rooms that have been vaccinated. That's a good thing to hear, because I'm also concerned about that. And one other concern I have, it's just a story that I've been hearing about a lot of places where these vaccines are still sitting on the shelves. And does that mean that in states, I don't think that's happened here in any of the jurisdictions near us.
Right.
But, people are just not coming in to get them. I mean, how long can a vaccine stay on a shelf?
Well, so that depends. The Pfizer vaccine initially required dry ice. I think they have since amended that. And the Moderna is a regular refrigeration, right? So most of the vaccines, are good for 30 to 45 days. I think the main thing is the states need to loosen them up and just allow anybody who wants to come and get a vaccine so that folks can actually come in and get them as quickly as possible. A lot of our public health departments that were originally doing all this rollout really didn't even have the infrastructure, the internet appointment setting infrastructure to actually manage taking care of our communities.
Right.
So I think, that's one of the things that we've really got to look at is making sure our public health systems actually have the infrastructure that they need so that we can respond to something like this a little bit faster moving forward.
Right. Well, like I said, I have still probably 20 more questions to ask you.
Yeah.
But this virus is not going away. Hopefully you're not going away, so we can continue to have this conversation. I would ask anybody out there who's watching, if you have some questions for Dr. V, send them in to us at news@washingtoninformer.com, because I want to make sure that it's just not all my questions, but I think I'm asking some that the public wants. Is there anything you think we need to know before we sign off?
I just tell people, if you're vaccinated and you're going to be around unvaccinated family members or friends, please wear a mask and keep everybody safe until we kind of get everybody vaccinated. And if you have people that are a little leery about getting vaccinated, listen to them, be gentle, be ginger, and encourage them to go talk with their physician about it.
Great. Okay. Yeah. All right, Dr. V, thank you as always for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Okay, doke. All right. All right. That's it for this edition of WIN TV. Thank you so much for being with us and for spending a little bit more time because we have gone over. But we still have a little bit more from WI Bridge. They're going to bring, of course, the media prints with you for what's going on in DC, and a local artist who we are featuring this week. And we want to see who that artist is on Sounds of the DMV. As for WIN TV, I want to say so long. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. It's Emancipation Day. It's a holiday in the District of Columbia. If you don't know why, just do a little research. Find out why Washington, the enslaved people in Washington were the first freed. What does that mean? And why are we celebrating Emancipation Day? We'll see you next week. Take care.
Welcome back to another lit week of What's Going On DC. I'm your boy, the Media Prince. Let's get started. In thank you news, have you heard of the Feed the Fridge? Well, it's a new effort to bring nourishment to those in need during the pandemic. They also help businesses stay afloat during the pandemic. They do this by placing refrigerators around the DC area and paying local restaurants to fill the fridge with meals daily. And that's what I'm talking about, giving back and keeping businesses open. And another thank you goes to SOS 1000, that's Saving Ourselves, an amazing organization dedicated to helping our communities in all ways possible. And they just did that this week, feeding properties in Northeast and bringing the one and only Quinn Cook to help. Take a look. Hey DC, the DC Council just passed a new exception to the eviction bill. The council voted to allow landlords to evict tenants who pose a threat to health and safety during the pandemic. In other news, Maryland becomes the 25th state to end sentencing for minors, life without possibility of parole. In health, DC Health has canceled all Johnson & Johnson vaccines that have started this week. I don't know about you, but if I was scared then, I am 100% even more scared now. Congratulations to DC's own chef, Eric Marshall, who was just named Chopped Champion on the Food Network show, Chopped. Take a look.
Eric Marshall, you are the Chopped Champion, and you are moving on to the $50,000 finale. Congratulations.
Let's keep the congratulations going. DMV's own Rico Nasty announces her collab with Crocs. And you know we all love Crocs. And she teases new music. Take a look at everything now. She also makes history too, y'all, as the first DMV artist to perform at the Afro Punk Festival. Congratulations. Also dropping new music today is DMV's own IDK with the help of our favorite Migo, Offset. Take a look. Our favorite baller KD just released his new KD 14 shoes. Take a look. Mayor Bowser expects DC schools to fully reopen in the fall. After that Johnson & Johnson health scare, I just cool it for a while. I mean, the numbers did go a little high when we began reintroducing school a few weeks ago. But let us know what you think. Straight from the White House, here is the official portrait of Vice President Kamala Harris. You guys know what today is, right? Yep, you guessed it. It's Emancipation Day. And tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. in honor of our freedom and our progression, Don't Mute DC and partners will be educating on DC statehood, featuring performances by Backyard and the Experience Band. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another week of What's Going On DC. Remember to follow our hashtags, WIBridgeTMP Style to get all the latest look, and WGODC. For all this and more, head over to WIBridgeDC.com. Until next week, be safe and let's have a great weekend.
Hey, count this motherfucking money though, man. Real live jocks is in the motherfucking scene, man. Gay, by the way, y'all. Man, real live, man. Hey, break this shit some phone off, fool.
Report live from Martin Luther King Avenue, man, Southeast. Live from the Washington Informer, man, downstairs at the Fortune store, man. At the Entrepreneur store, man, we here, man. You know what I'm saying? Culture over corporate volume 1, volume 2 out right now, y'all.
I'm off for presidents to represent me.
I'm over there, fucking presidents, Lord, I never wish death on nobody. Lord, we gon' be left with nobody. Lord, banksters fiat me. I mean, forgot we can't ever fulfill prophecy. You wonder what they did when Big died. You wonder what they did when Pac died. 20 years unsolved cases after shots fired. If this verse don't put me in your top 5, you need to be smacked so hard you spin clockwise. Trayvon, Sandra Bland, Mike Brown, why? It's only one God, it's one sky. It's only one people, it's one time. It's only one truth, it's one mind. The government taking orders from the devil. It's the only type of rap that's special. MJ and Prince died too. We ain't forget you. You know you can't stop the sunshine. Can't slow down when it's crunch time. The straight song for the club if your cup's high. Right now we partying like Trump died. Partying like Trump died. Partying like Trump died. Partying like Trump died. Hey, we partying like I'm off for presidents to represent me. I'm off for presidents to represent me. I'm off for presidents to represent me. I'm off for their fucking presidents to hold up. Lord, I never wish death on nobody. Lord, we gon' be left with nobody. Lord, allow them to see they lead blindly. Lord, they done use your name to tell lies to me. I'm a from water to wine MC. I can talk like this cause I got God with me. You wasn't really rich before the deal. The soul is a vehicle, your spirit drive the wheel. The only currency is a good deed still. One line to make the whole hood be still. Celebrate, we will, can't keep still though. Vengeance says we can still in the heat still. They don't even want to see me eat a meal or withdraw one for the thrill. I'm like, kill mo, this shit is real, Joe. How they planning out the miles on Capitol Hill though? This who the lyrics for. The creator of the universe gon' make your soul the furnace of hell like coal, as it was told. You just can't assassinate evil, but if he died today, who gon' be happy? The poor people.
I have never seen
Culture over Corporate Volume
so
1,
blatantly
2 out right now,
and
Volume 3.
unapologetically
Produced by Odyssey,
unmolested by
coming soon.
enlightenment. This is a man who spent
Shout out to
2
the
years of
Washington
his life
Informer, man.
weighing against.
Hey, count this motherfucking money though, man. Real live joggers in the motherfucking scene, man. Gay, by the way, y'all.
For me, to put Pure Lounge together, it really came from somebody else seeing something in me. I was doing parties with Mad Power Unit back in the day. Shout out Tupac D, Dominic Moxie. I was with them. And shout out Debo, that's like Fat Trill manager. He was with Mad Power Unit. We was all promoting, throwing parties and stuff like that. K Street Lounge, the Avenue on 7th in New York, you know what I'm saying? But Mike Walker, he was working at Republic Gardens, he used to always see my grind, you know what I'm saying? Late night, 2, 3 in the morning at the club let-outs, you know what I'm saying? I'm young in my early 20s, 21, out getting it, you know what I'm saying? When most people that age, they think about partying. I'm thinking about getting money from the party, you know what I'm saying? So he was like, I'm taking over Bar None, which was changing in the Pure Lounge. And he was like, I want you to have a night there, the open mic night, since you already be rapping and you already like, when they transitioned out, he seen me there, you know what I'm saying? When they was doing the transition. So he was like, you need to just take over this night. And I was like, take over the night? I don't know, take over the night? He was like, yeah, you know how to throw a party and all that. We out here and beating the streets up. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna do it. I ain't even like know what I was doing, but I knew the fundamentals of throwing a party. You know what I'm saying? So now it's time to throw my own party. So that's what happened. He put the battery in my back. It was somebody saying something in me, and then that's what motivated me to be something that I never thought that I would be. You know what I'm saying? And kept a platform going, which it was a platform for me to be seen. But then Fat Trail came out of that. Phil Our Day came out of that. Rest in peace, Bishop Swan. He came out of that platform, you know what I'm saying? So many artists, man. The list goes on and on.
Wasn't really rich before the deal. Soul is a vehicle, your spirit tried to wheel.
There was so many people that believed in me, you know what I'm saying? So I want to do the same thing, you know what I mean? Empower, you know, everybody else I run across. And my brand, Culture Over Corporate, is a brand that is promoting a mentality, you know what I'm saying? To empower each other. And let's not unconsciously empower our oppressors, you know what I'm saying? Because Phil Knight never coming to the hood. Ralph Lauren, they never coming to the hood. Gianni Versace daughter, Donatella, she ain't never coming to the hood. Ever, you know what I'm saying? You let that ever echo. Ever. They never, ever coming to the hood. Ever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, let's empower each other and go out our way to spend our money with each other. If we know we trying to create something, you know what I'm saying? So let's put the energy into what we're creating, you know what I'm saying? So Culture Over Corporate, it's like a selfless brand. We got our own clothes, but it's like, I'm a poster boy for every brand, you know what I'm saying? Museum, Popular, every brand, you know what I'm saying? Especially from this town. And I want to promote the mentality with the brand. The brand is a mentality, almost like when you see Culture Over Corporate, you're going to know the want for your brothers what you want for yourself. Just like the negative connotation that's with a swastika, you know what I'm saying? And people know from what that symbol, what it is, from seeing my brand and my symbol that I created, a person going to know what it is, but it's going to be something positive, you know what I'm saying?
20 years unsolved cases after shot spot. If this verse don't put
about the current state of the music in the DMV, man, I love it, you know what I'm saying? And I could never critique it in a negative way. I could never critique the growth in a negative way, because I can look back at myself when I was growing as an individual. I wasn't perfect, you know what I'm saying? And people critique me, but I was growing, you know what I'm saying? So things always are growing and striving toward a state of perfection. You know what I'm saying? So as I'm growing, the DC music scene is growing, and I think that's the scope that people should look at it in. You know what I'm saying? So so we don't be so critical, and we can understand like that we grown. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the Piggy Killer Coons, the Rego Nasties, the Uncle Johns, man, Diamond District, everybody. You know what I'm saying? JG Riff. You know what I mean? Like shout out to everybody.
I'm up for presidents to represent me. I'm up for them.
Me on Instagram, Uptown XO _Elu. Elu, everybody ain't like us, everybody ain't like you. That's Uptown XO _Elu. Go to my website, y'all, cultureovercorporate.com. I got my albums on there, I got my merch on there, I got my album, we got vinyls and hoodies, shirts, and I got a album coming out with Odyssey. Look out for that, Volume 3, Culture Over Corporate Volume 3. You know what I'm saying? And more projects coming soon, so look out for me, y'all.
Celebrate, we will, can't keep still though. Vengeance is